Welcome to the College of Education.
Let's see. The workshop objectives. During this two-session workshop, so today, Tuesday, and again Thursday, students will be exposed to the essay scoring rubric and the competencies tested. The rubric you're getting now, the competencies will be on a slide. Be given strategies to master the competencies. And you're going to have the opportunity to practice some of these skills. So this is really important. The way to learn to write better is not to listen to someone, that is me, tell you how to write better. The way you're going to learn to write better is to practice writing. And so the homework assignment that Mr. Moyes is going to give you, things that you do in the Candidate Empowerment Center, they're going to help you practice writing. Okay, essay scoring. Your essay is going to be scored holistically by 2 raters, and the raters are going to use that exact rubric you've just been given. That's what they have in front of them when they're grading. The way this is usually done is 2 of us sit across the table from each other. We each given a stack of essays. I read the first essay, I flip it over, and on the back I write, 1 through 6. I write the number, and then I put it in the stack. I go through my whole stack, so does my colleague. When we're done, we trade our stacks. So now I'm reading the essays my colleague already read. So I read through it, I decide in my head, this is a 3. Then I flip it over and see what the other person gave it. If the other person gave it a 2 or a 4, so if we're only 1 off, then it's good, it goes in the next stack. If I gave it a 3, but the other person gave it a 5, that means we're not very close on this. Then it goes in a separate stack, and then a 3rd person will come around and read it if they need to. After a while, everybody in the room gets to the point where we're never more than 1 off. We maybe have 3 or 4 out of 100 essays that we're reading in the need somebody to read this again stack. So it gets to be a process where things are really close. You need an 8 out of 12 points. So if both of your readers give you a 4, you're fine. If one gives you a 5 and one gives you a 3, another person is going to be reading that essay to make sure, that the 8 is valid. So 8 is the score you're going for. So we're only going to look at the top rating, 6, okay? A 6 essay is notably effective. The main ideas clearly established and fully developed with specific details and examples. The reason specific details is emphasized here is that's one of the things we're going to go over today. Organization is notably logical and coherent. Another thing we're going to go over today. Focus is consistently maintained. I don't know. We're not going to talk about that as much. Vocabulary and sentence structure are varied and effective. So we're going to work on vocabulary and specific details kind of together. And errors in sentence structure, usage, and mechanics are few and insignificant. We're not going to work on that today. We will work on that on Thursday. These are all the competencies, and you don't have to read them all. You're going to have access to this PowerPoint. You have a question? Oh, okay, that's fine. But here are the important ones for what we're doing. Organize ideas and details effectively. So organization, you'll notice, is big to them. Demonstrate proficient use of college level standard written English. For example, varied word choice, syntax, language conventions, and semantics. We're going to work on that varied word choice today. It provides a section that effectively introduces the topic, which goes back to the organization, right? Provides a concluding statement or section that follows from or supports the arguments of the information presented. Determines the purpose of writing to a task and audience. That's another thing we're going to cover today. And maintains a consistent point of view. We're going to touch on that. We're not going to spend as much time on that. All the other things are not things we're going to work on today. Okay, that's why they're grayed out. And as I said, you don't have to have all this down. So we're going to start by talking about organization and detail development. So here's the first rule of organizing an essay. Keep the topics of the paragraph in the same order that you introduce them in the thesis statement. Okay? So if whatever you're writing about, you say, this is a bad idea for 3 reasons, blah, blah, and blah. Okay? The first body paragraph should be about that first thing in your sentence. Second body paragraph about the second thing in the sentence. Third body paragraph about the third thing you put in the sentence, right? Then you're going to have your conclusion. So for most of the kinds of essays you'll be writing for the GK, it's a 5-paragraph essay. Every now and then there's a 4 that you could get away with, but what they're really looking for is just your basic run-of-the-mill 5-paragraph essay. Introduction, 3 body paragraphs, conclusion. Okay. Now, there's an exception to that. If, as you're writing, you find that maybe you want to put these topics in a different order, like, ooh, this is my best argument, I should make it first. Or this is my best argument, maybe I should save it for last. You can move your paragraphs around, go back and change the topic sentence, then to match the order that they ended up in. Okay, because sometimes you're just like randomly thinking of 3 things, you get them down, you start writing. But then in the midst of writing, you go, oh, this is the thing I have most to say about. So you always want to start with or end with your strongest argument, right? So if you move around the order, go back and change the thesis statement to match that new order. Okay, because they're looking for organization. And that's one of the most basic, easiest ways to show that your essay is organized. Okay, you mention them in one order, you deal with them in that same order. Okay, body paragraphs, topic sentence is usually the first sentence of a paragraph. This is not a time to get cute. Okay, this is not a time we're not doing creative writing here. We're trying to get 8 points and pass this thing. Okay, so we're not showing off. This isn't the AP exam where we'd expect people to do stuff like that. We want a good, solid essay. So topic sentence, the first one in the paragraph, is absolutely fine. It should be followed by 3 examples or ideas that support that topic. Sometimes you can't think of 3. Sometimes you got 2 in one paragraph and you got 4 in another paragraph. You'll be okay. But if there's only 2 in each of your 3 paragraphs, you're not going to be okay, because they're going to go, this doesn't have enough support to it. Okay, so shoot for at least 3. If you can think of more, great, you know. But, you know, don't beat yourself up if for one of the 3 paragraphs you only have 2 examples, but you've got 3 for the other 2, you'll be okay. And you want to think of details that appeal to each of the senses. And this is called imagery. And this is where you can get those kind of bonus points. Because when you're writing this essay, you've got 2 choices. They're going to give you 2 topics, you pick one or the other. The people who sit there at the end of the month to grade all those essays, they're only reading about 2 topics. So they're going to read maybe 100 essays on whichever topic you pick. your chance to really set yourself apart and have, God, and then it started again. That's going to make your essay different is if you appeal to your senses. And that's what we're going to talk about and we're going to practice today. So what might a person see, hear, smell, taste, feel? And then at the end of your body paragraph, you transition to the next topic. So let's talk about ways to appeal to the sense of sight. You can use specific colors, okay? But you don't want to just say something is green. You want to say it's pine green or grass green or olive green or pale green. How would you describe this green, these chairs in this room? They're green.
A lime.
Lime green would be good. A bright green. A green that's the same color as the center of a ripe avocado. You know, there's all kinds of ways to describe it, but not just apple green. Okay, so not just green. Give them more detail, and that's, remember they said they want variety in vocabulary. So we're not talking about pull out your SAT, ACT, multi-syllabic words. You can use variety just in talking about what color something is, okay? Same thing for blue. There's lots of kinds of blue. You don't even need to say the word blue. You could say sapphire, because everybody knows sapphires are blue, right? Red, lots of ways to talk about red. You can also talk about the size of something, because when you're appealing to the sense of sight, it's not just what color something is. So you don't want to use words just like small, medium, and large, because those are boring and you're not going to get those bonus points where the reader goes, oh, this is such an interesting essay, huh? It could be tiny, average, jumbo, gigantic, teeny, bulky. So there's lots of different words to describe that. You could use shapes. I'm not going to read all of these to you. You're also going to have access to this PowerPoint. You can describe the appearance of something. It could be glossy or dull. It could be shiny or matte. There's all kinds of ways to describe the surface, because this is a white table and that is a white table, but they don't look the same, do they? That one's shiny, this one's matte. So just saying something about a white table doesn't really get the person there. Okay, this is a tall, matte white table. That is a shorter, shiny white table. Okay, so using words that describe, using adjectives will help you get some of those points for vocabulary and for variety. Okay, so we're going to practice. Both of these are plaids, right? When it's winter, people would be wearing flannel shirts that might have either of these plaids on them. We've seen them before. They're not spectacular or unusual. But if you just said somebody's wearing a plaid shirt, do we know which plaid? No. Okay. So how could we describe the one on the left?
The third.
Vibrant. Ooh, nice. Nice word choice. Okay. I would go a little step further. Vibrant red. Okay.
Anybody?
Yes.
So that reminds me of the wrapping of Christmas presents that I was seeing on Christmas morning.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Because we do use that kind of plaid at Christmas. We see it in bows and ribbons on wreaths and stuff. So we could say it's a Christmassy plaid that also immediately will bring to mind for people that there's red and green in it. Because when we say Christmas, people think red and green, right? So you don't even have to say it has red and green in it, because you said it's Christmas. It's a Christmassy plaid. Okay.
You have one too?
Oh, scarlet. Nice, nice. You could talk about how it's multicolored. because it's got some white and some yellow and black and stuff in there. You could say that it's a busy plaid, right? Because it has a lot more going on. That other one is kind of plain, isn't it? Yes?
Yeah, I was about to say, it kind of reminds me of the transit map. Like buses.
Oh, yeah, like all the different lines have different colors. Nice. That would be a good simile or metaphor, depending on whether you use like or S. Yeah. Okay, what about the other plaid? What can we say about it? So, I love that plaid. What?
Oh, wait.
Royal blue, okay.
Anybody else?
Very nice. Okay.
It's giving.
Toxic green. Nice.
That's a good one.
Royal blue and toxic green.
Think of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
Toxic green.
Okay, now I'm going to refer to something we're going to talk about in a minute, which is your audience. Depends on your audience, okay? If I'm talking to people who sew a lot, or if I'm talking to people who know a lot about the Scottish clans, I don't have to do any of that. All I have to say is that's a royal steward. And they immediately in their head know, if it's steward, it's got red in it. If it's royal steward, it's got white and yellow in it. The plain old steward, they don't have the fancy extras in there. The other one is a black watch plaid. So depending on your audience, you don't have to go through all that. You can just say the black watch plaid flannel shirt, and a seamstress would immediately go, got it, know what that looks like. Okay, so most people in this room wouldn't know that. You can't count on your audience who's a reader at the Florida Department of Education knowing that. But depending on your audience, that's all you have to say, and they would immediately know what it looks like because they're familiar with plaids. Okay, so you have to think of what your audience might know. Okay, let's talk about ways to appeal to the sense of hearing. We could talk about the volume of something. It could be soft or loud, which is kind of boring word choice, although it could be true, but it could be thundering or whispering, right? We could talk about the pitch, and those of you who are musically inclined know a lot more about this than the rest of us. I'm oversimplifying by saying it could be high or low, soprano or bass. There's all kinds of other ways you could describe pitch. You could talk about the quality of the sound, screeching. You know, saying it's a loud noise is one thing. That noise we heard earlier, that was screeching, you know. And then you could talk about the range, how close or far something is. It could be near or far, it could be close or distant, it could be adjacent in the next room, it could be remote somewhere down the hall. Sense of smell. Pleasant senses of smell, all kinds of words to talk about pleasant smells. But we also have words to talk about unpleasant smells. And you notice how the words that go with unpleasant smells are also unpleasant words. Right. So there's really, you know, something psychological going on there about the words that we use to describe something. Okay, sense of taste. Now, we know that taste and smell are very closely related, right? You walk into a house and it smells fabulous, and your mouth starts watering, and you can't wait to eat. But then we also know sometimes it smelled great, and then when you eat it, you go, oh, this is not all that. This isn't as good as it smelled. There are other times it smells great, and you taste it, and you go, oh my God, this tastes every bit as good as it smelled. So they can be separate or they can be similar. So there are other qualities besides the ones we already talked about. Peppery, sweet, acidic. The amount of taste, is it faint? Is there just a hint of something, or is it really strong? The sense of touch. And touch, not only like touching like this, but other ways that we experience something, that we feel it. So texture, there's all kinds of textures, but also motion, the motion of something. It can be tumbling, wiggling, all kinds of things. We could talk also about the temperature of something. So when I walked in this room, it seemed really, really cold to me. Now that I'm here, I'm okay with it. But you know, when you walk in a room or you walk out of a building and all of a sudden, it hits you, that feeling. You can talk about other qualities with the sense of touch, like something that's wet, dry, spongy, something that feels creepy. Okay, now back to body paragraph. So all those are details you could use in a body paragraph. So you repeat the pattern that we just talked about for each body paragraph. And then once you're done with the body paragraphs, you have to start thinking of a way to transition to the concluding paragraph. So you've got your introductory paragraph, your 3 hopefully body paragraphs, and your concluding paragraph. Each of your 3 body paragraphs are going to have how many examples? 3. We're going to shoot for 3. Okay. So before we start the next topic, questions about that vocabulary, variety of word choice, specific details thing. Yes.
Just like when you're concluding, what would be a good transition where instead of saying concluding with or to finish?
It depends on what you're doing. Let's talk about that when we get to the 3 topics we're going to practice, okay? Because then we'll be able to use some specifics for how you might get to that conclusion. Yes?
So basically, we're just trying to be like actions.
I'm trying to remind you that there's all kinds of more interesting ways to say things than just, it was big, it was green, or it was whatever, right? So, and you've seen what the competencies are. You see the rubric. They're asking for vocabulary. They're asking for variety. Easiest way to get those 2 things in, to get the points for those 2 things, is using some of these techniques I just talked about. Okay, there's all kinds of really fancy, hard things we can do too, but we're talking about that low-hanging fruit that's very simple, that everybody in this room can do those things, right?
Yes.
Pulling out your SAT level vocabulary, not everybody's going to remember all those words, what they meant, how to use them. That takes a lot. And you've got 50 minutes to write this essay. So it's not like to type this essay. I meant write as in compose. I didn't mean write as in with pen. So when you have a homework assignment, you've got a week to do it. You know, then you can pull out the dictionary, you can look stuff up. When you've got 50 minutes, you've got to pull on stuff that's in your head that you can get to pretty quickly. Okay, so these are all the quick, easy kind of things that'll still get you those extra points. Okay, purpose, task, audience, and point of view. One of the reasons this is important is you saw in the competencies, they talk about these things. They expect you to have mastered them. Not everybody stops to think about it. Now, when you're doing your 50-minute essay, my recommendation is you spend 5 minutes kind of planning, jotting down notes, doing a list, whatever, thinking it through. Do I have enough examples for that? I don't. Can I think of something else? Also, during that 5 minutes, you need to choose between the 2 essay topics. Sometimes it's a slam dunk, like, I don't know anything about that, better write about this one. But sometimes it's like, ooh, which one of these do I have more to say about? So you've got to decide on the topic, you've got to kind of think your way through it. Then you want to spend about 35 minutes writing. And that last 10 minutes, you want to go back over it and reread it. You want to move stuff around. You want to fix any of your mistakes. If you realize, oh, I spelled that word wrong, there is no spell check. There's no Microsoft Word with a squiggle underneath to tell you you did it wrong. It's just, you know, it's not a word processor. It's a notepad, basically. So if you go back and go, oh, I didn't spell that word right, see if you can think of another word that means the same thing that you do know how to spell. Okay, but if you give yourself that 10 minutes at the end, you can clean up all that stuff. So like 5 minutes to plan, and some of you will find if I spend 10 minutes planning, then I only need about 5 minutes cleaning up. Okay, so you can adjust that depending on, you know, your own writing process. But you need time to plan, you need time to write, and then you need time to fix it. Because they're looking at all that kind of stuff.
And I want to get you, Jared, for just a moment, when you do your CNRs in this class, some of you missed that. You have some great ideas, but you can go back and fix the little things that need to be fixed. Go back. I want you to practice that even in our assignments, so that when it's time for the test, you're already accustomed to doing that. Does that make sense?
Okay, so let's talk about these things. The mnemonic that you want to remember is task. The task, the audience, and the purpose. Okay, so task, that's the type of writing you're being asked to do. And we're going to practice this at the end, as I said. The audience, the person or people you're pretending to write for in the prompt. Here's the thing about the GK. They don't usually tell you who your audience is. They let you kind of pick who your audience is. But since you want the reader to be on the same page with you and know what you're talking about, you can say something like, as parents of elementary school students know, then it's clear you're writing to the parents of elementary students, right? If you start it and say, as elementary school teachers know, then you're writing to elementary school teachers. So in your introductory paragraph, you have the opportunity to make it clear to your reader who your audience is. You can pick your audience. If you're writing to the superintendent of schools about a topic, you're going to be writing very differently than if you're writing to the PTA. The PTA is made up of parents and just folks, right? But the superintendent of schools, you're going to have to like crank it up a notch because that's a more formal kind of writing. So make it clear to the reader in your first paragraph, the audience you're addressing, because then you already have them on your side. Okay, and then they already know kind of when you make your arguments, they'll go, oh yeah, that's something a parent would want to know about. Oh, that's something, you know. So get them right where you are to start with, and then it makes everything else easier after that. And then the purpose is the reason that you're writing. So task, you want to look in the writing prompt for the task. It's going to tell you that you should argue a point. You should be informing. You should be discussing. Let's talk about the difference between informing and discussing. If I'm lecturing to you, I'm trying to inform you of stuff, right? But if we're having a class discussion, what goes on there? Yeah, back and forth. Everybody's got their point of view. So if they tell you to discuss something without coming out and saying, give us both sides of this story, that's what they're asking you to do, because a discussion should be kind of more like a give and take than informing, which is, these are the facts. You can compare things, you can analyze, evaluate,
explain.
Explaining is a lot like informing. Those are very similar. Explain, you might go into more detail about why something happens the way it does. Where informing, you're just saying it does happen. What's the difference between analyzing and evaluating?
I think we analyze something. You evaluate, go down, go to the.
Okay, and evaluating usually means you're kind of ranking it or rating it in some way. If you're evaluating different car stereos, you talk about which one's better. And you might not just say this one's better overall, but this one's better at bass, this one's better at this one's better at. So that breaking it down and talking about it is the analysis part, but you don't necessarily put any value on it one way or another. When you're evaluating, you're also bringing to it like, and this one's better, and this one's the best. So evaluating kind of implies that they want you to make some sort of judgment. Where analyzing, you're just breaking it down into parts, you're telling us all the parts you can think of.
Now, you guys will need to be able to do this with each other for our assignment.
Okay, so the audience. Pretty apparent that it's the person or people to whom you're writing. It could be an individual or a group. You're writing to an audience for the reasons that are stated in the prompt. So they've already given you a prompt. You're just deciding who to address about this prompt. And you want to consider what the audience needs to know. So if you're trying to evaluate something, right, you're trying to lead them to conclusion here about why something is best. What do they need to know to get to that conclusion with you? What do they want to know? Because sometimes the things that people want to know don't match what they really need to know. But you need to address those two because you have to respect, you know, what they want to. You can't just say, well, that's not important. You've got to respect what you anticipate that people might want, and then what they already know. And that is key. Because you don't want to insult people. You don't want to act like you don't know anything about this at all. The two examples I gave earlier, as elementary school parents know, right? You're already honoring the fact they know something. They know some of this stuff. Okay? Same thing if you said about teachers. Teachers already know some stuff. So when you frame things in that way, you're acknowledging that they already know something about this. But then you're going to give more information or whatever you're going to do in your essay. And then if you can, imagine what questions they might have and try to answer them in the writing. So like, if I were a parent, what might I already know about this? What do I need to know? What do I want to know? And then those are some things you want to talk about in the writing. Because otherwise your reader gets to the end of your carefully written essay and says, yeah, but what about such and such? In their head, probably not say it out loud. But if you leave your reader with a question, you're not going to get that 6. Okay, if you've already anticipated the question, answered the question, then they'll get to the end and go, oh, I don't have any more questions about this. That's good. Mhm.
That it's not necessarily that writing, it's just knowledge more opportunity.
Right, right. Yeah, and what I'm talking about now is not great fiction. We're not talking about winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. We're talking about getting a good score on the GK. Okay. If this were a creative writing class, we'd be having a very different discussion. Okay, the purpose. In a composition, the term purpose refers to a person's reason for writing.
to inform, to entertain, to explain, to persuade, okay? I have yet to see a GK essay where you're asked to entertain anyone. Okay, but I'm also quoting someone else, so I'm giving credit to that source. But that's what purpose means in writing in general. Just know you're not going to be asked to be fun. Okay, purpose, the reason you're writing. So you want to look for one of these things in the prompt. If they want you to argue a point, then they're going to say the writer states a clear position and presents evidence to support the position. So arguing isn't just giving your opinion. Okay? You have to have support for that opinion. And that's the hard part in 50 minutes if you can't think of any support right off the top of your head. That's when you pick the other topic. Huh? Then sometimes you're going to be asked to inform or respond. Sometimes you're going to be very neutral. You're just going to present information so the readers understand something. And often if you're being very neutral, you let them come to their own conclusion. You know, it's a little harder to write a conclusion when you're asking someone to make their own conclusion, but it can be done. And you don't always have to be neutral. Okay, purpose and audience. So during the brainstorming or outlining or planning or pre-writing, whatever you call it, you want to think about the type of essay you're writing in a couple important ways. So think about what the purpose is and think about the audience. And if you stop and make those two decisions, once you've decided I'm going to do this topic, okay, what's my purpose for writing it? What audience am I going to address? I can pick whichever one I want. I can make one up. Okay, but if you keep those two things in mind, it's going to help you with all those other things like point of view and focus and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so the purpose is the reason or the goal that you have for writing about your topic. And your audience is the specific people for whom you're writing. And a lot of times essays that aren't good essays, it's because good GK essays, not good essays out in the world, is because you didn't really have a specific audience in mind. So you're kind of all over the place with reasons and stuff, where if you had had that focus on one particular audience, it helps you organize, it helps you do all kinds of other things. Okay, and people always ask me this, and this one's tricky, because sometimes the task and the purpose are the same. Sometimes they're different. And you have to stop and think about, in this prompt, do I have two different things I'm doing or just one? Okay, so a task can be said to be an activity that's done with a particular purpose. So Tuesday morning is trash day in my neighborhood. Monday night, I take out the trash. It's a task, right? It's done with a purpose. I want that stuff hauled away the next morning. But in the middle of the week, I might take the trash out, not because it's just fun to take the trash out, but because it smells, or because it's overflowing, or because, so it's still a task I'm doing, but I have a purpose in doing it. Okay, it's not just, hey, let's take the trash out. It'll be fun. You know, we're doing a task for a reason. There's a purpose behind it. On the other hand, an activity can be work that's done with no particular, and it doesn't have to even be work. You could be playing basketball. You could be playing basketball for no reason at all other than it's fun and you like to play basketball. Then it's an activity, right? But if you're taking basketball class and you've got to learn how to dribble with your left hand, I don't know, something for that class, then it's a task because you're doing it with a purpose, right? You're not just doing it for no reason, just, you know, to kill time because it's fun, because your friends are there and you want to do it, but you're doing it so that it's the same activity,
playing basketball. But whether you, depending on the reason you're doing it, depends on whether you have a purpose for it or not. And, you know, sometimes just to kill time is a good enough purpose. Okay, point of view. Point of view in a discussion, an argument, or nonfiction writing is the way you think about a subject. So this has to do with the writer, him or herself. Okay, not the audience, not the purpose, just you. A neutral point of view means representing fairly, proportionally, and as far as possible without bias. And it can be appropriate if you're asked to give both sides. Okay, then being neutral is good. You may be neutral all the way through the essay because you're giving pros and cons of whatever it is. But then in your conclusion, you might take one side or the other. You know, because there are more advantages than disadvantages to this, then in your conclusion, you can like no longer be biased. But all the way through the essay itself, you're going to be fair, you're going to give both sides of the story, but then you can weigh in the conclusion sometimes, depending on the prompt.
Any questions before? No questions? Okay, good.
Okay.
Yes. We can come back. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, so you've got your purpose. You want to match your point of view as much as possible to the purpose. Do you want to sound authoritative or personal? Okay, do you want to sound like I'm the expert on this, so you need to listen to me? Or do you want to sound like we're all just folks here and we're just talking about this? Inform or entertain, as I said, GKSA, not very much entertaining going on. Do you want to be distant or close to the reader? Do you want to be more formal or informal? Okay, if you're going to be authoritative, you'll probably be more formal. If you're going to be personal, you'll probably be more informal. So some of these kind of go hand in hand. They're not like two separate decisions to make.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by distant or closely?
It's kind of like formal or informal. Distant is when, you know, if you read a science textbook and it's just like facts, that's distant. Okay. If you're reading, however, maybe an article in a magazine that might be about the same scientific topic, but the person's talking about how they went to Belize and stuff, then they're trying to be more relevant and relate to the reader. They're trying to be closer to the reader.
Personal, in other words.
Yeah.
So if I'm writing a more personal,
Mhm.
and but I'm going to be closer to the reader, would it be appropriate for me to change my pronouns throughout? Because I know typically
You don't use I and you don't use you. Right. First and second person pronouns are really frowned upon in essays like this. Because I have yet to see a topic where they're asking for like the story of your life, which then you're going to want to say I.
Right.
There are ways to get around that though, even if it's what I think. You can say it seems that, which means I think that. So there are ways to teach yourself to not use I. And a lot of times, if you don't use I or we and you use, one might suppose that's more formal immediately, it's more distant from the reader immediately, because it's that kind of language we don't use in everyday speech. We would only use that if we were writing.
Like, for example, if there was a prompt saying like uniform and non-uniform, what benefits, would you put your own opinion in that?
It depends on the purpose and stuff. And we're going to look at that in just a second.
Okay.
You're right on the money. Okay.
Okay, I mean, so that make it clear to the audience you're addressing. So let's say the prompt is like, taking step out of school,
Mhm.
who would be the audience? That be like the teacher, their parents?
You can decide. That's when you decide. Do you have a lot better arguments to make to the teacher? Or do you have better arguments that the parents are gonna buy into? So sometimes you'll think of all the arguments you have and then go, oh, parents are gonna buy this. You know, or teachers will never buy this. Don't make the teachers be your audience, because you get to pick the audience. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna practice now. So, and these are real GK topics. I didn't make these up. Online schooling has expanded to include even the primary and secondary level. I know to you guys that's not news, but back in the day when I went to school, only college did online, only college. And then not even every college. While some still believe that it cannot provide everything that traditional instruction can. And we've seen that through the whole COVID thing, when we didn't have any choice, we had to do it. Here they're asking you to analyze the advantages and disadvantages of online schooling. What is the task you're being asked to do?
Good. Who can tell? Yes, ma'am.
Compare and contrast?
What does it say here? What word do they use?
Maybe
But they use analyze. The task is to analyze. You want to analyze, but you're right, you're going to do the analysis by giving the advantages and disadvantages. This is an example of an essay that you might really be able to pull it off well with 4 paragraphs. Because in your introduction, you're going to say there are many advantages and disadvantages. Then maybe you do a whole paragraph about advantages, a whole paragraph about disadvantages, and then your conclusion. Okay, so although I say usually it's 5 paragraphs, this one you could pull off with a 4 paragraph if you do it well. No, there's not, there's not a source or anything. They're just going to be like that.
So really, you're using your own reference, own information, past experiences to add value to this question.
I know, like, it's been said that, like, useful facts, like,
You can make stuff up.
appearance, I don't know, like, something like that. Is that okay?
I wouldn't, because if the reader knows for a fact that that's just a big lie,
Mhm.
it psychologically swings them against you. They're like thinking, this person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Just make it up.
And then it kind of flavors the whole rest of the essay that they're looking at. It makes it hard for the reader to be unbiased. If you just make a mistake, we don't all walk around with encyclopedias in our head. Most of the time, we couldn't say 75% of the parents surveyed feel one kind of way. However, it may be that driving to write your essay, you were listening to NPR, and they had an article about this very thing, and they stated a fact like that. Then you can say, according to a recent NPR news article or whatever it was, and if you remember that fact, use it then. But there are times that you just happen to know something, you know, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been driving into work and I listen to a story on the radio and I come in and at 10 o'clock that morning, somebody brings up something about that. It's like, I know something about this. And then, you know, so if you do, use it. If you don't make something up.
Okay, so if you say 75%, you don't remember that it's that percentage, you say the majority?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and you can say, even if you can't remember the name of the article or anything, in a recent Time magazine article, it's shown that a majority. You can say something like that because it's not a lie. You remember, you know, it's like, darn, I wish I could remember if they said 85 or 75. say a majority, an overwhelming majority, you know?
Going back to the description, correct.
Yeah, right, right,
Okay.
okay? So there are ways around things like that. Okay. Let's look at the next one. What audience, wait, let's go back to this, audience. What audience might you choose? Parents, okay. Who else might be interested in the advantages and disadvantages?
Students and teachers.
Okay,
Admin.
yeah, it may be your college roommate is trying to decide, should I take this psychology class online or not?
Who you have?
Right. Mhm. Great. So any of those audiences are fine. One is not necessarily better than the other. It depends on the arguments you can think of, the advantages and the disadvantages. And then in your head, you gotta think, who's this gonna convince? Parents are gonna buy into this. We'll make parents the audience, you know? Or, gee, this is something that my college roommate really, we were just talking about the other day. Should I do this hybrid? Should I do it face to face? Should I do it online?
Could you have more than one audience?
I would not suggest it for this.
Okay.
Yeah, in the real world, yes, you could. But you've got 50 minutes and you're trying to write a 5-paragraph essay. Don't get fancy.
Just like, say you were like disadvantages to teachers because they're not
Mhm.
present in class, stuff like that, but it could be advantage to parents. Now,
Okay, but then perhaps you're talking to the PTA or the school board is your audience. And then you can talk about advantages to different groups and disadvantages.
Oh, okay, okay.
And it may be that people who are visual learners do better at this, or auditory learners or whatever, but people who are tactile and kinesthetic learners, it's not.
You can talk about them, but that's not your audience.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. They're your examples,
Okay.
okay? They're your details you're using.
Okay, so you can give example about
You could say, although online schooling has extended to include primary and secondary level, even college students are still faced with this dilemma, with this question, and then go into a college student might be considering, here's the advantages, here's the disadvantages. Okay?
Yes, or allowed to maintain our posted on one side, like, not talking about just college and primary school, but like, let's say if I just want to talk about primary school. then that's something that-
Then make it clear in your introduction, that's what you're doing. Make it clear that you know that they're asking about primary and secondary. You got that, but you're really focusing on the advantages and disadvantages to primary school students. Yeah, so that's perfectly legit to do. Okay,
Good question, guys. Look,
how are we doing time wise?
you have 5-6 minutes.
Okay, we've only got 2 left. Okay. This one, I think, is one of the harder ones that I've seen. Until I thought about it, and then I could think of some answers I could give. But the sentiment has been expressed that it has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. Evaluate whether or not our technology has exceeded our humanity. What's your task? Evaluate, exactly. They're asking you to evaluate. And what's your purpose here?
Inform.
Okay, but you gotta take one side or the other, don't you? The other one, they wanted advantages and disadvantages. This one, they want you to take a side, whether or not, okay? Now, if you go, I don't even know what it's become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity means, do the other prompt. Correct. Don't waste a whole lot of time trying to figure it out, okay?
There'll be 2 prompts.
2 prompts and you pick one.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, there are 2 prompts and you pick one. So if you just go, I don't have a hint. Once I thought about this, I thought about
think of all the ways technology is used to like bully people and stuff. So then you would say it has exceeded our humanity because it gives people the opportunity to be nasty without looking you in the face. Okay, somebody who bullies you to your face is one thing. Somebody who hides behind a screen is another thing. You could take the other side though, and you could say, look at all the ways that technology allows us to connect. My little 3-year-old granddaughter, if I will FaceTime with her and do those little filter things with the whiskers, she will talk to me forever. If I call her on the phone, she's like, oh, she's 3, so she needs that visual interaction. So, I can make the argument that it allows me to be more human. Even though she's in Pennsylvania, I can still interact with her. So once I thought about this, I thought of some ways I could make an argument one way or the other. But if you can't, don't waste a lot of time, just move on. And here's our last one. Some people believe that high school classes should not begin before 9 a.m. Do you agree or disagree? Wait, read the rest of it. Write an essay clearly explaining your opinion. Provide specific and detailed reasons as support for your opinion. So what's your task?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was just like, no, you go ahead.
Okay.
What's the task, somebody?
Yes, sir.
Are you?
Explain.
Yeah, explaining.
Okay, they say, clearly explain your opinion. Your task is to have an opinion, so you got to take one side or the other and clearly explain it. And look, right here, they say specific and detailed reasons. So let's quickly just brainstorm. What are some reasons maybe it shouldn't start till 9?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't know where I read it, but I read that like the average like teenager needs at least 8 hours of sleep in order like for them to grow like healthily and like mental stability and all that. And most of us don't get out of work until late at night. Well,
That's okay. That's a great example. Now, let's talk about the specific and detailed reasons. Here's where you want to use all those adjectives we were talking about. When you come home, how tired you are. You're not just tired, you're exhausted, you're mentally drained. You couldn't really do homework if somebody paid you money because you just got off work. Okay. You need to wind down a little bit. You can't just drop in bed and go to sleep either. You need some time to wind down. Okay. Then in the morning, if you don't have to be to school as early, what are some things you could do in the morning?
you can wake up and do work.
Okay, you could wake up and do homework early because you would be bright, you would be fresh, things like that.
Sharp.
Eat breakfast.
Yeah.
There is a great chance to use all those smell and taste and everything, right? Instead of grabbing a Pop-Tart or a protein shake, right? When you come down the stairs, you're gonna smell that bacon, you're gonna hear it crackling in the pan, there's your opportunity when talking about breakfast to get some of those great details. Okay.
When it says your opinion, can you put
I still would stay away from it.
how would you state your opinion without using those?
You can say that, well, or research has shown that students need this much time. People who do have to work late need that time to get up in the morning and you could talk about taking a hot shower, all kinds of good things about steamy showers and stuff you could say, right?
Right.
That you might have time to pick your clothes more carefully. And, there's all kinds of things you can talk about. And that's where you can really, this last prompt, you got to pack all those great details we talked about into that. Okay?
So let's give Dr. Roberts a round of applause. This information you will be using, because you will be writing an essay and you will be also